proud to be here once again. I got my Navarro Bowman, black on, red on. Feeling good, look good, feel good. Tonight I'm going to bring you a story about the greatest owner in the history of professional sports. We're going to talk a lot about the D line and spotlight them and any Niner news that we uncover together. All that to you tonight for an hour, maybe more if I feel like it, because we are live and whatever I say goes.
Smith in a gun with Moore in his left hip. Third down, Alex takes the snap. Alex looking, got it, post, and it's got it! Touchdown! Touchdown, 49! Vernon Davis with the play of his life. Alex Smith with the play of his life. And the 49ers are 9 seconds away from playing for the NFC Championship. Can you feel Candlestick?
You are now tuned in to Primetime, Mr. Nice Guy, exclusively streamed at twitch.tv/Niner Faithful Radio.
Happy hump day, ladies and gentlemen. Or if you're watching this on something else, happy day to you. I'm Mr. Nice Guy, your host of Primetime, and thank you for joining. I have some news for you. The state of the franchise is coming up, and I'm excited about this. Some big news. Of course, they're going to go over the wild offseason, the trades, Trey Lance, the free agents, the injury news, healthy players and not healthy players. I'm excited to get this to you. Welcome back. Welcome back. Like I said, it's hump day, some people's favorite day of the week. Today, I bring you a story about a man that transformed this organization, Edward DeBartolo Jr., or D. Bartolo. So many people say his name so many different ways. I'm going to go with DeBartolo. Eddie DeBartolo Jr., owner of the Niners from 1977 to 2000. We're going to talk a lot about him tonight. But first, I want to get started and talk about that state of the franchise. State of the franchise, as you know, is a time when all the investors and board members and CEOs come together with players and coaches, answer your questions as fans, give you information to the fans and the press, let you know where we stand as a franchise headed into the 2021 season. I cannot wait. There's supposed to be a special unveiling. A lot of rumors they're going to be unveiling the 90s throwback home jerseys, the red ones with the black trim, the opposite of the white jerseys we saw recently, and I'm excited for those. I'm gonna like me maybe a Nick Bosa or a George Kittle in the red. Leave in the comments who you would get in that jersey. If you had the '90s red jersey, who would you get? So yeah, the state of the franchise coming up at the end of the month. I don't want to give you a false date. You can check that out on NinerFaithfulRadio.com. They have the dates on there. But that is at the end of this month. We can look forward to that. It is going to be an online event. So go online to 49ers.com and see what you can do about that. Coming up next, we are going to talk about the defensive line. This is something I wrote about this week. I have an article up on NinerFaithfulRadio.com, and I talked about how I see this defensive line akin to dogs chasing cats. I think that they are hungry, snarling, nasty beasts, and I don't care what quarterback is in there. I don't care if he's a mobile quarterback. I don't care if he's the greatest pocket passer of all time. I feel like when our defensive line is healthy and they are coming after quarterbacks, that is the greatest thing in the NFL right now. I feel like the 49ers' bread and butter is the defensive line. I can go down the names, and I will go down the names. In fact, give me 2 seconds here. Just this. Let's bring up some names. I got my little handy-dandy notebook. The wife always keeping me prepared. So I talked about who I would see in the depth chart. Who on the depth chart from left end to defensive tackle, right end. Who are the front four guys in our 4-3 defense who are going to really make the most impact? And we all know if the knee holds up and he comes out swinging, then Nick Bosa's the man. Nick Bosa, the moment we drafted him, this organization turned around. We became feared, and rightfully so. He came in and he did not look like any rookie we'd ever seen. He struck fear in the hearts of every quarterback we played that season, and we played some great ones. We played against Aaron Rodgers twice. We played against Drew Brees. We played against Lamar Jackson at his finest and Patrick Mahomes at his absolute finest. He bested us. When Nick Bosa got drafted, there was a division amongst the fan base. That division being, can he stay healthy? This is a question we have with a lot of our guys. Can he stay healthy? Nick Bosa played his whole first year. He did miss some time. He had, I believe, groin or hamstring issues. And this is football. You're going to have those. But I'm wondering what happens now, because he did suffer a serious injury last year. You could blame it on the turf. You could blame it on the player not being prepared. You could blame it on Kyle Shanahan, as a lot of these guys in the media do. But what happens with Nick Bosa now? Now, do we worry? Missed a few games his rookie season, missed basically the whole season last year. He is a generational player if he can stay healthy. He reminds me a lot of J.J. Watt. Watt, arguably one of the better edge rushers or defensive linemen to play the game. Very, very similar in terms of aggression, size, and speed. They both play similarly in the fact that they do things with their hands and their strength, and they keep up with their footwork, and they can get into the backfield like an art form. But very similarly as well, J.J. Watt has had a lot of issues in his career. J.J. Watt has had some back injuries, some knee injuries. His hips were hurt one year. He's only really had one shot at the playoffs playing for the Texans, and it was the 1 year he wasn't hurt. Is that going to be us? I mean, I get a little afraid of that. Our defensive coordinator is DeMeco Ryans. He was the linebacker for the Texans many of those J.J. Watt years over there. I think about how they played fast and aggressive, and that defense was actually very scary. They ended up falling short because they didn't have an adequate quarterback. The Niners of 2021 are actually kind of similar to the Houston Texans of 2006. We have our powerful edge rusher, Bosa or Watt, who gets hurt and may not be able to stay healthy. We have linebackers in contract years like the Texans in 06 did with DeMeco Ryans. And now DeMeco Ryans is retired from playing the sport and coaching the defense of the 49ers. So it's going to look similar. He's going to take what he learned back in 05 or 06, whenever he was Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he's going to come in here and he's going to instill the same mentality off the back of Nick Bosa. And it really all depends if Nick Bosa stays healthy. I think he can. I think he does everything he can, but you look at the history of his family, you look at his dad who played, way back when, he was injured pretty often. You look at his brother who hasn't really completed many seasons without missing a few games. The Bosas are naturally aggressive, highly aggressive defensive players who maybe over-aggress themselves into some injuries. And that's the bottom line. A lot of that talent comes from overcompensating. And I hate to say that about one of my favorite players on the team, but this is why injuries happen. You can even put that back on Jimmy Garoppolo. When he first tore his ACL in that game versus Kansas City a few years back, he was running. He was doing some sort of mobile quarterback, let me be the hero kind of ball. He should have gone out of bounds. Instead, he tries to juke in bounds, and they take his knee out. You can't overcompensate to make yourself look talented. You can't. You have to be as talented as your body allows. This is how injuries like that happen. This is how you get injury prone players or labeled that tag of injury prone. If you overcompensate for your talent, which I feel JJ Watt started to do in Houston, he started aging, not being as aggressive, as fast, but you see him explode, and he would you put all of that into those explosions, and now he's kind of a shell of what he formerly was, and you really only get him 4 games for your season. If I were the Arizona Cardinals, who just acquired JJ Watt, I would probably rest him, and if we make the playoffs, throw him out there. If Nick Bosa keeps getting hurt, I'm going to start saying the same thing to Kyle Shanahan. Hey, coach, how about we rest Nick Bosa all season long? We rest D Ford all season long. And then for 3-4 games, we just watch them wreak havoc and pray they don't wreck themselves into an injury. Or if they do, well, hey, we made the playoffs without them. We're confident without them. Let's get it done. Nick Bosa is only one part of that edge rush. I named the other part right now, D Ford. A lot of mystery surrounding D Ford as well. We thought he was going to be a go last year. Never really quite came to fruition with his back injury. There was a lot of scares, a lot of conflicting reports about was he healed? Is he healing? Can he play? I think that D Ford is one of those players we paid a lot of money for, and he's kind of rode the bench since we paid him that money. Luckily, he restructured his contract this offseason. I think he realizes even he hasn't been able to live up to the contract that we gave him. And so he's going to be a team player because I think that'll help him out in the long run, whether he stays with us or not. But that doesn't take away the mystery. That doesn't take away the mystery of, is he going to play? Because right now, you got a guy coming off an ACL injury and a guy coming off a mysterious back and or neck injury that we're not really sure if it's healed yet. So we're either going to have these two monster all-pro players who feel like they're back on the outsides quarterback hunting, or we're going to be kind of pushed into our depth a little bit. Now, I wrote and talked about that very depth on the edge. On the edge, we have Samson and Bukum coming from LA, the Rams. He's a very strong, very aggressive player as well. I can see him moving guys out the way to make a tackle, or moving guys out the way so Fred Warner can come in and make a tackle, or one of the linebackers can fly through the holes this defensive line makes. What you got down the board, edge and inside on this defensive line, is strength and agility that shouldn't be there in these like bigger, stronger players. You know, you look at Bosa and you're like, man, that guy's cut. And then you look at Javon Kinlaw on the inside and it's like, whoa, that's a big dude. You see Eric Armstead and he's a tower. He's 6'6" or something like that. So you got these guys, they don't look like they should be fast and agile. But what they do is they toss you out of the way and they use that agility to make tackles, or they toss you out of the way with their strength and our linebackers make the tackles. This defense is so hungry. Hungry is the best word I can describe them as. They just seem like they haven't ate in days and the football is their food and they just, beeline towards it. And I love it. I love watching this D-line eat. So, yeah, but there's mystery. There is mystery. We are going to have the best defensive line in football if Bosa and Ford can come back. We're going to have a really damn good defensive line if just one of them can come back. Or we're going to have a defensive line that's going to have to rely on the linebackers and secondary to be a little tighter, which is okay. We have the secondary to do that. If Jason Verrett and Emmanuel Mosley taught us anything last year, that secondary can hang on for a little bit each play. They got burned a little, but usually that was when Witherspoon was in there. Luckily, Keller Witherspoon's going to be going to Seattle, and so I'm going to enjoy watching us throw for 400 yards on that side of the field. Ryan Fitzpatrick just destroyed us aiming at Akilla, and I'll never forget that. And I'd seen that kind of look like it was going to be a hole for Witherspoon for a while, and it turned out, sure enough, it was. So happy Emmanuel Mosley stepped up. So happy Jason Barrett has put together a string of seasons without a major injury. He's really feeling like he's back. You can see that swagger in him again. They got their number changes, so they're feeling good. They get to pick the number they want. And the secondary is built up enough, I would say, right now. And our linebackers are solid enough to where if Bosa isn't what he was, or his knee breaks under the pressure, or all these negative things I don't really want to talk about, then at that point, I think we can still hold up. I really do. I think that we have a defense all around. It's beyond the defensive line. And like I said, it's the linebackers, the secondary, the coaching, the depth, the practice squad. It's all of it. Brick by brick, we have built a championship defense because championships win defense. The man I'm talking about today, Eddie DeBartolo Jr., he built this offense, and that's what the team was known for. He hired Bill Walsh to build the offense, but he was sneaky. And what you don't remember much about those Niners, or what I don't hear people talking about as much as they should about those Niners, is our defenses were nasty. We had arguably the greatest safety of all time in Ronnie Lott, and this team has always been very gold standard on defense. And defensive line has always been a major piece to being that. You look at major teams across history who have absolutely dominated at defensive line, they win Super Bowls. I instantly in my head I popped up Michael Strahan, O.C. Umenyiora with the Giants in 2000s when they shouldn't have beat the Patriots. The Patriots should have been another undefeated Super Bowl champion team, or should have been the only undefeated Super Bowl champion team, and they lost. You know, but the defensive line right now, as it stands, it could go either way. It's really going to depend on how Bosa progresses in training camp, progresses through preseason. I doubt he's going to play very much. And it really depends on if D Ford can be in there. But like I said, we have backups. We have Samson Ibuka. We have Contavious Street. We have Willis. Let me look at my notebook. Jordan Willis, who had just 2.5 sacks last year, but that was a career high for him. In his 2 years, which to me is progress. You ever make a career high stat after playing for a couple years, you're getting better, and you can't be mad at that. Because if a player can get better at any moment, he can reach that point where that better is better than your better. You know what I mean? At any moment. And I think that Contavious Street hasn't really been given the opportunity either. He tore his ACL on his pro day, missed his first 2 seasons in the league, and now played last year very, very little. I think he had 11 tackles. Now he's going to be kind of the guy that if things go wrong injury-wise, Contavious Street, it's time to make your name. Do you want to be picked up on a contract when your rookie contract's over? Now's the time. You dealt with the injury. You fought your way back. You're going to get some play time because I doubt Bosa and Ford go hard every single snap coming back from their injuries. We're going to see you. We're going to see how you match up against Ibukum and against Jordan Willis. And we're gonna understand what kind of player Contavious Street is real quick. I still have high hopes for Contavious Street. I think that he is a pretty fast and quick learner. I think that he has a very strong standing in the locker room, which means he must be doing something right on the field. You don't get that following just off personality alone, But let's talk about the inside now. Let's talk about what our interior defense is going to look like. Interior, we definitely are going to see the uprising of Javon Kinlaw. This is a move that we need to have come to fruition really quickly because in 2019, in that same spot on the defensive line was DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner went to Indianapolis, kept continuing to be great. He is a really, really good defensive tackle. He was one of the biggest reasons why we caused so much pressure on that defensive line. And I'm telling you right now, the absence of DeForest Buckner has been felt. Take away the injuries, take away the fact that all those people hurt, we were still a top 5 defense. Take that all away. And we did get a little worse. Just a little when DeForest Buckner left. Because you can't take a guy who spent his first few years learning the hard knocks of the sport, learning the hard knocks of the defense, and was getting pretty good. It had been kind of a build for DeForest Buckner, getting people around him that were going to help elevate his game. And 2019, his game got elevated. And even though he was the one pushing sacks into Eric Armstead, who led the team with 10 that year, he was definitely a catalyst for why so much pressure was on these quarterbacks. DeForest Buckner was the reason Aaron Rodgers had nowhere to go. DeForest Buckner was the reason Drew Brees had nowhere to go. He was the one always in their face. He was always in their face, but never on their body because he was always chasing. He was always in there so quick. Quarterback would have to take his eyes off downfield and try to make a move. When you make those moves against the Niners, that's when the edges eat you. And this is what happened with DeForest Buckner in Indianapolis. Still, he is making those same moves, making those same plays, and really producing as a quality player. In comes Javon Kinlaw. We traded DeForest Buckner to Indianapolis for that 12th overall pick. In the draft of 2020, we picked Javon Kinlaw. Now we need to see that come to fruition. He had his rookie year. It was okay. I will say it was okay. He showed me some good things. He created pressure. I'm going to look back at his stats right now. He had 33 tackles. That's pretty good for a defensive tackle. 1.5 sacks. I don't really like counting those halves. I think it's more of like a 2. If you get a half sack, that means you got a sack. Somebody else just helped you. That's okay. We're gonna put those all together. Take a quick second here. Got my Niner mug. Usually it's not filled with water. So let's continue on this interior defensive line. So we got Javon Kinlaw. He needs to produce right now. Like I said, he had 2 sacks, 33 tackles was nice. Caused a pass breakup, I believe. He was hungry. He was pushing guys to the outside a lot like DeForest Buckner would, but he wasn't really getting there. I think his ceiling is higher than DeForest. I think we are seeing the best Buckner has to offer in 2019. I don't think he was even as good with Indianapolis as he was in 2019 here with us. But Javon Kinlaw's ceiling is through the stars. He is so strong and he is so aggressive that this man is unbelievably, unequivocally scary. He's a big, strong, nasty, hungry, snarling dog. And I really feel if he can elevate his game here in year 2, this is going to cause problems for the NFL. If Javon Kinlaw is what we thought he was when we drafted him at 12, he's going to be problems for many, many years. Opposite of him on the inside is Eric Armstead. Armstead is listed as a defensive end. He can play defensive end. I'm pretty sure if like D Ford can't start or Bosa goes down for some reason, we'll see Armstead kick it outside, and we'll see DJ Jones move into that next spot, or maybe somebody else, maybe a guy like Zach Kerr can get in there. Maurice Hurst, who played very well for the Las Vegas Raiders the last couple of years. We have some depth inside, and I'm actually kind of excited about that because there's a lot of guys that can take in and out and make plays. You have Arden Key and Eric Arms. They're both kind of the guys where you can line them up all over the defensive line and really just kind of go after players or quarterbacks. And just the possibility of Bosa and Ford joining this depth of players, the possibility of having it Bosa, Javon Kinlaw, Eric Armstead, and D Ford, that's salivating. It really, really is. It makes my mouth water, and it makes me want to play against some quarterbacks like right now. You know what I mean? Uh, I'm gonna go ahead and click one of these. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Niner Faithful Radio. We're also on Instagram at Niner Faithful Radio. Got some banners for you guys. And we'll leave that there. Facebook and Instagram at Niner Faithful Radio, or go to NinerFaithfulRadio.com. You can catch everything we talk about, all our live shows. You can catch some pretty good articles by me or Jamie. Just come on in, drop a line. We like to hear from you guys. Continuing on with the defensive line, I'm just going to wrap this up by saying I still believe that we have the best defensive line in football. I still believe that, and I do believe things are going to go right for us. I mean, you can only have so many injuries before things start to shape up. Just like the opposite end of that spectrum, you can go and have so much good luck your whole life, but eventually that band is going to snap. It's the same for the other. You can have so much bad luck before that band snaps you in the other direction. The 49ers were down, and then we came back in the Harbaugh era. We were down, now we're back in the Shanahan era. And we hit a little speed bump, but 2021 is going to be a good year for the San Francisco 49ers, and I am pretty sure it's going to be off the anchor of the defensive line. Our defensive line is going to make quarterbacks scared again, and it's going to be hard to compete against us because you're not going to be able to run your game plans against a defensive line that breaks your wall down so fast. I am very, very excited about this. I really, really am. We're going to move on. I wanted to bring some news to you guys, but with OTAs ending, there's not really much news. Some players change numbers. We might get new jerseys. I already talked about that. I see a lot of people still talking about Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo. Grant Cohn can't seem to let it go. I think he doesn't know what to talk about, so he's just creating content. You can talk about other things than the quarterback battle that isn't there. There's not a quarterback battle happening in San Francisco. People are so obsessed because we spent the 3 first-round picks. We didn't spend those first-round picks to get this guy for this year. We didn't even spend those first-round picks to get this guy for next year. Those future picks were for future years, if that makes any sense. We traded 3 first-round picks because we know Jimmy G is covered for at least 3 more years. Should he stay healthy? And if he doesn't, we have a top draft pick who's been learning very steadily, and I hear is pretty coachable back there. That's where he'll stay. That's where he'll learn. And if and when he gets his opportunity, I believe he will succeed just like the rest of you. But Jimmy Garoppolo's not going anywhere. I am so tired of this Jimmy or Trey week 1 talk. It's not going to be Jimmy Garoppolo versus Trey Lance in training camp. It's not going to be Jimmy Garoppolo versus Trey Lance during the season. They are a team. They're working together. They're figuring out how to play, and that's all there is to it. The starter of this football team is Jimmy Garoppolo. Starting quarterback of this football team is Jimmy Garoppolo. Let me say that one more time. The starting quarterback, Grant Cohn, for the San Francisco 49ers is Jimmy Garoppolo. Week 1, guaranteed. So I was going to bring you some news, but that's all I could find. You type in Niner News, and it's Jimmy or Trey, Jimmy or Trey, Jimmy or Trey, Jimmy or Trey. Jimmy. That's not a question. It's Jimmy. If he stays healthy, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. It's 28 and whatever. Took us to a Super Bowl. Was a few plays, arguably a no holding call for Nick Bosa. or a Richard Sherman burn down the stretch. It was a defensive collapse more than it was an offensive collapse in that Super Bowl, away from winning a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo is not threatened by a rookie quarterback. I don't care how many draft picks you threw at him to get him. He showed up healthy. He showed up bulked up. He showed up ready. He showed up, as George Kittle said this week, with a fire lit in it. That kind of makes me happy because Jimmy Garoppolo with a fire lit in him is going to be some sort of spectacle. I'm going to write this up so far. What I think is going to happen is going to be very much what I think happened in Atlanta when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. Matt Ryan took a few years, finally got it together, and had an MVP season, and ended up going to the Super Bowl. Also lost, but he had a hell of a season that year. I can see if our wide receivers stay healthy and our quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, stays upright, this team is going to have some magic in that offense. I know I was talking defensive line, but this team has magic. Right now on the TV, right now over here on my TV, I have the Week 17 game versus the Seattle Seahawks on. It's on mute, but I like to have Niner stuff up when I do this. Kind of keeps me going, keeps me refreshed. I get to look up and just feel it. I picked that game today because we won and I wanted some winning feelings. I don't even know where I was going with that. I got completely sidetracked. I love the Niners. I love those all white jerseys, man. The red ones are going to be dope. The red ones are going to be really cool. Raheem Mostert. So, anyways, this offense is also scary. And I'm tired of the Trey Lance versus Jimmy Garoppolo talk. I'm going to end it right there. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the quarterback week 1. I'm sure I'll have to say this again throughout the preseason. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the quarterback week 1. That's not news. Please stop reporting it. You can tell these guys have nothing to do now that OTAs are over. They're like, oh, what do we talk about? What do we talk about? That's why I'm going back in time. And speaking of this week's spotlight, sorry for that. We get a drink of water because we're going in on this one. This week's spotlight is going to be brought to you by my house because no one sponsors me yet. But hopefully somebody will. People with money, if you're out there, Niner Faithful Radio is looking for Niner streamed sponsors. If you have a Niner business or if you have a business and you're a Niner fan and you want to throw some ads streaming at us, hit us up, NinerFaithfulRadio.com. Talk to TJ. He's the one you want to talk to. We are going to get started on, like I said before, arguably, not arguably, it is. He is the greatest owner in professional sports history, Eddie DeBartolo Jr. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. Now, that's a name that if you ask anybody in this organization, what does it mean to them? They will speak so highly. I don't think I've ever seen a player or a coach or an owner or anybody related to football spoken so highly of than I did doing a little bit of research for this piece. Every single person that Eddie DeBartolo has touched has loved him like a father. He was the reason that these 49ers believed themselves as a family. From 1977 to 2000, Eddie DeBartolo treated these 49ers to a first-class lifestyle, to a golden standard, and to family. Eddie DeBartolo went to Cardinal Mooney High School in Youngstown, Ohio. His father was, I guess you could call him a developer or an architectural development tycoon. The Youngstown the DeBartolos had a pretty big organization. Pretty big is an understatement for what it's become. But the DeBartolo Enterprises uh, developed houses for veterans of World War II. Uh, Eddie DeBartolo Sr. created the first shopping center, first shopping mall in the history of America. Uh, he was the first one, and you can see it still there in Youngstown, Ohio. And it's actually a really big mall. You can tell they knew what they were doing. So, and that's something I didn't know actually till I was doing the research for this. So, of course, being a fan, I'm a little bit younger of a fan. Born in '89, saw the '90s. You hear a lot about Eddie DeBartolo Jr. growing up, but I was 10 when he stopped being the owner, and I wasn't as into the front office stuff yet. Definitely I had the players down, I had the numbers down, I had the stats down. But Eddie DeBartolo Jr. was just the name on the plaques that I saw. So doing research for this over the years of my life as a fan, and then of course this last week really kind of diving in again, refreshing my memory and all the stuff. That was one thing I actually didn't know about them. I didn't know that Eddie DeBartolo Sr. was the creator of the shopping mall. Anytime you go to your town mall, anytime you go to Fashion Fair here in Fresno, California, or any other mall in any other city, you can credit that to Ed DeBartolo Jr. or Sr. Sorry. He created the shopping mall. He amassed a fortune, and his family took the next level in the terms of wealth in this country, and they decided to buy a struggling NFL team. Now, last week, I talked about how Tony Marabito had fought through a little bit of adversity despite having a really positive lumber hauling business, had a lot of money, but he had adversity actually using that money to bring an NFL team to the West Coast. When he did, it was a team. My wife and I were watching a news presentation talking about Eddie DeBartolo Jr. when he bought it back in 1977. And the news anchor goes, the normally struggling 49ers are looking to try to find anything they can to help bring them out of this gutter that they call a team or something like that. And it was just like, I have never heard the Niners talked about like this. I have never. Any growing up, having been born in '89, even if I could remember, all they were talked about was glory in '89 and '90. And then growing up as a kid, I think I was 6 years old when we won our Super Bowl in '95. The only one I was actually, present enough to see. So it was always the Niners golden standard, the Niners glory. Who are the Niners taking on next? Who's the enemy? It's not the Niners. They're the good guys. To see a news story from 1976 when that deal was getting kind of made and see them talking about the Niners like we're the Lions or the Browns, I was kind of taken back. Like, I wanted to slap that guy. How dare you talk about my Niners like that? How dare you, sir? but it was true. It was true. Tony Marabito had some success in the AAFC, had 4 winning seasons, went to the championship and lost to Cleveland. But when we came to the NFL, the 49ers struggled. They were from a lesser organization. They just weren't as up to par as some of those other NFL teams that have been built for many, many years. And they struggled big time. It wasn't until I think that was in 1946 we talked about. 1945 maybe. Don't quote me. Or do quote me. Leave it in the comments. I love to be corrected. I like constructive criticism. It's okay. It's okay out there, internet. People constructively criticize me. I'll take it. I'll take it right here on the chin, okay? Whatever date that was, going back to 1977, it was 25 years of dismal performances. It was 25 years of losing records, and they were finally kind of on an up and up swing when the sister of Tony Marabito decided to sell the team to these shopping center moguls from the Midwest who wanted in because they love football. You're from Ohio, so you know the game. And they bought in Eddie DeBartolo Jr. in 1977. And his first order of business, we had a coach that was pretty revered. Coach, where did I put that? Coach Monty Clark. He was revered by a lot of the players at the time. And when Eddie DeBartolo took over, his first order of business a week later was firing Monty Clark. This was not a popular decision. The Niner fan base and the Niner player base were very upset. They actually liked Monty Clark a whole lot, and so now you have the excuse me, pulling a Wendy Williams. So now you have this team who one of his first quotes was, "The NFL's a business. We're going to run this team like a business." Didn't go well. Then he fires popular Monty Clark. That doesn't go well. And then he trades, and then he hires Joe Thomas. That's what it is. Joe Thomas. This guy pissed off so many fans and so many players and so many people involved in the Niner organization. He went 7-25 as president of football operations back in the 70s in early 80s. In 3 seasons, 7-25. The team was just horrendous, just bad, bad, bad. One of the worst things Joe Thomas did was he traded away 3 first picks, might sound similar, for but a little different. He traded 3 first round picks for OJ Simpson. And now we all know the story of OJ. He was acquitted of the murder he most absolutely committed. He got away scot-free. But before that, if you don't know, O.J. Simpson was actually a Hall of Fame style running back for the Buffalo Bills for many, many years. And he was really, really good. But he was definitely one of those running backs that after 30, his talent level, was up here. It dropped. He wasn't very good anymore. The Bills were offloading him. They wanted to see what they could get. And here comes 49ers president of football operations, Joe Thomas, arguably the dumbest person in 49er history, trades 3 first round picks for a guy that wasn't even going to play for 2 years with us. It was bad. It upset a lot of people. But in 1979, after that happened, the Joe Thomas chaos, Eddie DeBartolo realized you can't do this. You can't let this guy run your team into the ground. You have to take the reins yourself. So he did. He fired Joe Thomas. He took the reins himself. He brought in people into the organization. And in 1979, he saw an old coach at the age of 47 for the time. That was an old coach who had a long career collegiately at Stanford. Never really got to break into the NFL. No one really understood why Eddie DeBartolo was even looking at him. But he hired Bill Walsh out of Stanford, and Bill Walsh turned into one of the greatest coaches of all time. After hiring Bill, the team would go, I think, 2-14 and then 6-10. Very, very reminiscent of Kyle Shanahan. Comes in, takes this really bad team and starts implementing his system. Doesn't work right away because his system takes players that can run it through drafts, through free agency, through trades. They end up building what ended up being the 49ers that we knew and that we know and love to remember. They brought in Joe Montana out of Notre Dame, where Eddie DeBartolo Jr. went to college. They brought in so many other guys, Roger Craig. These guys in 1981 put together a 13-3 season. Now let me tell you about 1981. In 1981, in the city of San Francisco, playing sports and entertainment was the last thing the city was thinking about. Harvey Milk, the very, very active politician, openly gay politician, had just been murdered. And our city was in turmoil. San Francisco was falling apart financially, structurally, anything you can think of that bad could happen to a city. San Francisco was kind of going through it, including the assassination of their mayor and one of their highest leading politicians in Harvey Milk. The city was in mourning in 1981, but since 1979, there'd been a fire smoldering under the surface, building, growing. Started with the hiring of Bill Walsh. Then they brought in Joe Montana. And they got Roger Craig and they got other wide receivers. And then this team became a monster in 1981 when the city of San Francisco needed them the most. You know, I watched a documentary a while back. You should check it out. I think it's on YouTube. And it was a Tale of Two Cities. It might have been a Football Life, A Tale of Two Cities. And it talks about how in the 70s, Dallas was falling apart and the Cowboys got on the back of Jerry Jones, got on the back of winning championships. And with that pride in their team, they brought people to the city that wanted to work, that wanted to help bring that city back to life because they watched their Dallas Cowboys on TV winning championships. And they wanted to be a part of that culture that Jerry Jones brought. They brought that city back to life. And in the 80s, the Niners went through their own renaissance, went through their own San Francisco tragedy. And when they were going through this tragedy, at the same time that Dallas was, both of those teams became great, great rivals at the time because they both had their cities on their backs. And whoever was going to pull this one off was going to end up going down in history as the greatest to their city that any sport to their city could have ever been. What these two cities ended up getting was decade of a decade and a half, really, of back and forth, back and forth. Niners winning 5 championships, Dallas winning 5 championships. Both cities couldn't have come out any better from these two teams playing at such a high level than what happened from, I believe it was 75 to 95. The 2 decades that the Cowboys and the 49ers absolutely destroyed the NFL and the Steelers. I'll throw them in there too. I mean, the 3 teams, you didn't really, for those 20 years, you didn't see a Super Bowl without one of those 3 teams. You just didn't. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. built that team. He was the one that hired Bill Walsh. The rest of the NFL thought he was crazy. First, you hire Joe Thomas and watch him run this team that was kind of on the up and up into the ground. Then you hire this old man out of Stanford, never coached. A lot of people back then had the mentality of if he's that old as a coach and still hasn't made it into the NFL, then there must be something wrong with him. He must not be doing a good job. But that's not the case. And it turns out that wasn't the case with Bill Walsh. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. knew it going in, and hired him anyways because he just felt it. He felt he had what it was going to take to be a champion, and he made the right choice apparently because by 1981, 13-3 in the regular season, we played that Dallas Cowboy football team, and in a wild game in January, it came down to one final play. Joe Montana to Dwight Clark, the catch, immortalized in history. And there's a reason for that because the Tale of Two Cities, both of them were fighting for that victory. Both of them needed that moral victory. And the 49ers grabbed it out of the air after a sweet little pump fake from Joe Montana and a wounded duck tossed by him. Dwight came down with it and etched the Niners into immortality. Previous 25 years of play, never even sniffing a championship game. But in 1981, Eddie DeBartolo Jr. cheered with everybody in that press box. They ended up going to beat Cincinnati 26-21 for their first Super Bowl. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. would help build the team and help bring people back for 5 more Super Bowls. In 81, 85, 89, 90, and 95 with different teams. When Jerry Rice came in and they won the back-to-back and then the one in 95, that was a whole different team than the Super Bowl champions of 81 and 85. The variables being Joe Montana and Eddie DeBartolo Jr., Bill Walsh. I love talking these legends of the 49ers. So we move on. 1996 to 1998. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. pleads guilty in 1996 to a gambling fraud case. Allegedly, he lent money to former Louisiana Governor Edward Edwin. Edwin went down, named names, and he was one of them. These things happen. You can go back in Eddie DeBartolo's history and see that he wasn't a perfect man. But at the same time, he was a perfect man, if that makes sense. Because he made mistakes. But he didn't make mistakes and act perfect. He made mistakes and was one of them. He made mistakes and was always just one of the guys. In 1992, he was accused of being a pig human of a man and crossing a line. He wasn't arrested for it. He didn't have any charges pressed. It was a waitress somewhere in the San Francisco area that claims he did it. And yeah, I think he settled out for about $200,000. It says. In 1998, he pleaded guilty of failing to report a crime with the Edwin Edwards case. He didn't do any time. He was fined $1 million and suspended from the NFL for a year. In the middle of that year, tensions rose between him and his sister, who had married into the York family at the time. His sister Marie York would eventually be given the team from Edward DeBartolo Jr. He didn't have to. He wasn't forced to. I think he was at a point in his life where he felt like he had succeeded. He had had many, many years of success and fun and enjoyed the hell out of it all. But I think he learned something in going down for that crime, that he just wanted to spend time with his family. The thought of going to prison, it made him want to spend time with his grandkids and his kids and really help raise them and not devote himself 100% to football anymore. It was an admirable decision so he could be there with his family. And there was a lot of rumors over the years that he was forced out of the 49ers, but I don't think this was the case. He admits that wasn't the case. There was a rift between him and his sister, but there was a long talk, and he decided to take the other half of the family business, and he left that half to her. She was not enthusiastic about the sport. She wanted it for the business that it was. So she gave it to Jed, her son. Jed York is the current CEO and owner of the San Francisco 49ers. And that's history. That's Eddie DeBartolo Jr., 5-time Super Bowl champion head or owner. The thing about him, or the biggest thing, actually, I should say, is August 6, 2016 was probably Eddie DeBartolo Jr.'s biggest day. Because on August 6, 2016, it became official that he was inducted into the Professional Hall of Fame for National Football. And I butchered that. He was selected into the National Football Hall of Fame on August 6, 2016. First ballot Hall of Famer, which, if you don't know, means the first time you're on the finalist ballot, the first time you are eligible to be nominated, you get in. He's the only first ballot owner into the Hall of Fame to this day. And that doesn't happen unless you win 5 Super Bowl titles. There's 2 other guys that could probably say that, but and I'd say Robert Kraft or Jerry Jones eventually. But no one did it like Eddie DeBartolo. And if you talk to anybody about Eddie DeBartolo, it's just nothing but high praise. I couldn't believe how much high praise came from all these interviews. There wasn't anybody that even condemned him for the wrongdoings that he did do. He just absolutely left this trail of kindness wherever he went. Whoever he met felt like family, felt like they were brought in by him into his own personal family, and now they're blood. Everybody you talk to has these same sentiments. Everybody, every single interview. I have never seen anything like it. Like, you watch how people talk about Kobe Bryant right now. Kobe Bryant having passed, everyone's like, man, he was a competitor, but he was such a kind guy. He was a great dad. People talk like that about Kobe because he's gone. Let's be real. He was one of the greatest players in his sport and demanded perfection. But if you remember when Kobe played, he was kind of an asshole because he was so competitive, and other players really took it to heart sometimes. And it wasn't until after his passing that everybody kind of resoundingly said, yeah, he was one of the greatest. He was even almost as great as Jordan, if not greater, and blah, 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 blah. Eddie DeBartolo got the sentiments of a dead man while he was alive, if that makes any sense. What I mean by that is, when you pass away, people don't want to point out your shortcomings. People don't want to point out what you did wrong in life. They're going to let that go. Eventually, some of those things may come to light, but they're going to let all that stuff go, and they're going to try to remember you for the man or woman you were. When you die, you get dead man sentiments, where people talk very kindly of you. I think Eddie DeBartolo Jr. is still kicking, and he gets dead man sentiments. People talk about him like a father who passed away. They don't say anything bad. They just speak highly, and they have nothing but good stories. And I don't believe that anybody who ever crossed paths with Eddie DeBartolo Jr. ever left without a story of kindness or greatness. And that has resounded through this entire organization for as long as it goes back to 1977. This team has played with that family mentality. He came in here and he said he was going to run it like a business, but he fell in love and ran it like a family. And they won championships. I've never seen a time where you'd see our starting quarterback, Montana, going out to nightclubs and drinking with our owner. And they were basically the same age. And there was a little group of guys he called my guys. Jerry Rice became a part of my guys, and they were all just kind of like this little group and you'd never really seen it before. You'd never seen owners hanging out with their dudes like that, like outside of 49er or team specific parties. And so seeing that, you can tell how close they were. And watching that translate onto the field is history. And it's a gold standard of history. Yeah, so Eddie DeBartolo Jr., I don't think there's any more I can say about the guys. I've run through my notes. I've said all I can. He's the greatest owner in professional sports history. And that is, no one can argue that. Nobody can argue that. He really did that. He made him the family. And that goes down through the entire organization now. You got a guy like Kyle Shanahan, our head coach, who grew up in the 90s and early 80s watching DeBartolo's 49ers, watching the glory days, seeing what it took to make those glory days, seeing what it took to be that kind of Niner. And you have this team now because Shanahan grew up in that, and Lynch grew up in a time where across the country it was always being talked about how close of a family they were. You can see it in our team. They used that and they built us brick by brick. And you can see in the Niner organization right now that DeBartolo mind frame, that love and family and golden standard is across the board. We are one of the closer teams than I see anybody else in the NFL. And I'm watching. I watch this sport religiously. I love this sport, and I watch every team because I'm a Niner fan, diehard Niner fan. I don't know, I got tattoos. I bleed the Niners, but I also bleed football, and I watch your teams, and I very very keep a close eye on the enemies. There is no team in the NFL as close as the 49ers right now. And from 1977 to 2000, there was no team in the NFL closer to their ownership or front office than the San Francisco 49ers. And that's a fact. And we're seeing it again right now. We've seen it emerge with Kyle Shanahan and his boys. Kyle Shanahan last year took a vacation this last offseason to Cabo San Lucas. George Kittle was there, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trent Taylor, who ended up leaving, Kyle Juszczyk was there. You got all these guys hanging out with their coach. If Jed York was a little cooler, he'd probably be there. But Jed York's not very cool. He's kind of a nerd. No offense, sir. But you see that family mentality is what I'm saying. You see these guys spending their off seasons together, bonding, creating family memories, getting to know each other's wives and kids and cousins and families. And it's just such a tight-knit group. It translates on the field. In the 80s, from 81 to 95, that mentality, that Eddie DeBartolo Jr. mentality, translated into 5 Super Bowls. So far in 4 seasons, the Kyle Shanahan mentality has translated into a Super Bowl appearance. And possibly, hopefully, fingers crossed, more. I think that's all for me tonight, guys. Eddie DeBartolo Jr., that's all I can say about him. The Niners, there's not much more news. I'll have more for you next week, though, and another spotlight. We're definitely going to have another position spotlight. Next week, I'm covering the linebackers. So keep an eye out for that article sometime this weekend, maybe Monday. And you guys have yourselves a great evening, a great afternoon or morning if you're watching this on anything else and you didn't catch it live. As always, go to NinerFaithfulRadio.com. You can see us right down there, NinerFaithfulRadio.com. We got a whole team of people trying to bring you the news, the updates, a look back in time. Check out our 49er Faithful Rewind or Niner Faithful Radio or Good Morning Niner Empire. We're all a big family. We're all a big team, and you can catch every single one of us at NinerFaithfulRadio.com. Why don't you come on back next week? Hump Day, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, go Niners. Whoa!